Welcome everyone to Breakthrough Conversations. I am your host, Danielle Perry, and I'm so glad you decided to join us today. On this podcast, you'll hear the stories of people who've gone through challenges and just different situations where God really had to help them break through and overcome. So I have Minister Lynn. I just called you by your title. I have Lynn Rue here today. Thank you so much for joining.
Absolutely.
So glad you're here. I have you on today to share your story about raising your son who's challenged with autism.
Yes.
So I'm definitely looking forward to this conversation because I know that I'm going to discover things that I've never heard before about your story.
Yes.
So I'm definitely excited. So before we delve into that and all that you want to talk about with your son, just tell us a little bit about yourself.
So a little bit about me. I am Lynn Rue from New Jersey. Woo-hoo, shout out. Home of White Castles. Yes.
White Castle. Good old White Castle.
Which whom I love and I miss. So I'm the mom of 5, affectionately known as the Rue Tribe. I am an educator in Baltimore City Public Schools. I am married to Johnny Rue, affectionately known as Danté. We've been married for 23 years, and I'm just loving life at this moment. That's what I'm doing, loving life in my 50s.
I know that's right.
Loving it.
So let's go ahead and take a trip down memory lane.
Okay.
And I want you to tell us, before you became pregnant with your son that we're going to talk about today, what was life like for you at the time?
What was life like? Well, it's I often say that, like when people get saved, like some stories have I've heard people say, "Oh, I was having fun." Right? "Oh, I was having this, I was doing this, I was doing that, I was having so much fun." I was not. I was very much looking for love. And I was not looking, I wasn't trying to find Jesus to find it. So it was a lot of bumps and bruises. It was a lot of relationships that I shouldn't have been in. Hoping that this relationship would fix all of the woes that I had and all of the things that were going on with me, and me thinking if I could get into a loving relationship, I would be better. So that's what it was. I was working. I was a teacher. Well, I still am. But yeah, it was just a lot of me trying to find that, what do I say? That Hollywood end of the story type relationship, thinking that it was gonna, everything was gonna be right in the world, and I would be okay.
And how old were you?
So when I found out I was pregnant with Jay.
Well, how old were you,
in that time?
Yeah, in that time.
Oh, so that was definitely like high school, college.
Okay.
Like I just wanted to have that perfect relationship.
Yeah.
I really did.
Yeah.
Not saying that I was like, that I didn't have like fun or there weren't fun moments. But it really was spent a lot of time trying to be in that perfect relationship. So you get in a relationship because you're seeking that perfection, right? We could say that.
Okay. Yeah.
It was with the person that I was in a relationship with, Justin. Justin's biological father. We had known each other since teenagers, so it was kind of like an off and on, back and forth type of thing.
Okay.
It really wasn't a solid time where we were like, yes, you're my boyfriend, or you're my man, I'm your girl type of thing. It wasn't like that. We were just like back and forth and all of that, all the time, all the time.
So Justin is the name of your son.
Yes.
How old were you when you found out that you were pregnant?
25.
You were 25.
25 turning, 25.
You were 25. Describe to us what were you feeling? What were you thinking when you found out?
Oh, yeah, I wasn't happy. Nah, that wasn't like, oh yeah, I'm pregnant. No. Because it was a relationship that I should not have been in. So I'm not going to disclose all of that.
Yeah.
You can kind of formulate in your mind however you want to go with it. But it wasn't a relationship that I was supposed to be in.
Yeah.
So when I found out I was pregnant, yeah, it wasn't a good thing. It wasn't. My mother was more excited than me when I told her.
Oh, she was more excited.
She definitely was. When I told her I was pregnant, she was like, and I was like, no, it's not a good thing. This isn't a good thing.
So were you, when you found out you were pregnant, how was your relationship at the time? Like, were you and the guy you were dating, like, were you guys on the same page? Were you bumping heads?
No, we were not on the same page at all. Yeah, we were not on the same page. And so I knew, again, it wasn't a good relationship. It wasn't a relationship I was supposed to be in. Let me say that. And so I knew that for me, it wasn't good to be in, nor was it for him to be in. And so when I found out, I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe it. Like, this, like, how did I get here? Yeah. Right. Now, you know how you got there. You were doing what you were supposed to be doing.
You know
how you got there. But it was like, how did I get here? Like, how did I get here? Like, I am, like, better. Yeah. And you're educated. Yeah. Like, it's not like you, like, you're not smart. Yeah. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And I just remember I was home for Thanksgiving, and I knew I was pregnant. And again, I told my mother. She was excited, and she was so excited. And she was excited about who I was pregnant by, because my mother liked this person. She loved this person. And so I was like, no, it's not a good thing. Oh my gosh. And she just kept saying it was going to be okay. That's all she kept saying. It's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. And I was like, it's not going to be okay. It's not going to be okay. And I went home, and, of course, I came back here because I lived here in Baltimore. And I took a pregnancy test and confirmed. And I remember the conversation because I called the person. I called him and I told him, no matter what, I love you. And I did. I did. I loved this person. At the time, I loved this person more than my own self. I really loved this person. I thought this. But God had been saying, no, that's not the person for you. Like, he kept telling me that. Not saying not specifically saying he's not the person for you. However, there were situations that were like
red flags.
Yeah. There were stops in the relationships. There were long gaps in the relationship. But I was like dead set on this is what I want to do. And I thought that I had in my mind, if I just marry this person and have a baby with this person, I'm good. I'm good.
But now you're pregnant and you're like, oh, shit.
Now I'm pregnant, like, that ain't good.
Right.
This isn't good for you. It's not good for me. Like, it's just not. And so when I said, I love you no matter what, I told him, like, hey, I'm pregnant. And I was like, what are we going to do? And that person said, we aren't going to do anything. And I was like, oh, wow. I would have never thought that person would have said that. I would have never thought that would have been the answer.
Wow.
Okay. And I was like, okay. And for some reason, I could not bring myself to have an abortion. I just could not do that. But it wasn't as if I didn't have one before. But with Jay, it was like, I cannot. I don't know what it was like. I just can't do it. I can't use that as a form of birth control. I'm just gonna have to go ahead and go through it. I'm just gonna have to go with it. And I said, okay, well, I'll call you when the baby is born.
Wow. So you're matriculating through your pregnancy. Were there ever any complications?
Yes. So there was one time where I went to, of course, because I'm a teacher. And so I had gone to my school prom, and, you know, out there, belly and all, high heel shoes, dancing. I mean, like, what are you doing? But he was my first baby. So it was like, oh, you know, nowadays, and, you know, you have the belly bump, and, you know, you have the high heel shoes, and it's celebrated. With me, it was like, what are you doing?
Right, exactly.
But I was dancing. So I went out there and I was dancing, and then later on that weekend, I started cramping. And
how far along were you? You remember?
How far along was I? The prom probably was like May, and Justin was supposed to be born in July.
Okay.
So yeah. So I started doing some cramping. I had to go to the hospital, and they had to they gave me something to kind of like slow it down or stop the contractions. It ended up being like a class action lawsuit with the medication that they ended up giving me, but I was not a part of that. However, but yeah, so that happened, but that was the only thing. And then from there they were like, you got to take it easy, because at that time, you know, this person has said, you're on your own. I'm not supporting you. I'm not doing anything. You know, I was working 2 jobs.
So you're kind of overworking your body.
Yeah, like I started working 2 jobs because, you know, you say you on your own. It's like, well, I got to do everything, you know. So I was constantly, like I said, I was working 2 jobs, buying things to get prepared for this baby who was coming, that I was going to be raising by myself. So yeah.
So you had the cramping, but those were the only
complication.
Okay.
Yeah.
So at what point did you discover that Justin was challenged with autism? Was it early on, or was it kind of down the road that you noticed something was different or something wasn't, you know, like what's happening? Or was it, you know, like did the doctors inform you? How was that?
So no, so I figured it out, because there were certain things that I noticed about Justin, that were just like, I don't know if that's supposed to be that way. Like when my mother and grandmother would come to visit, for their first couple of, like, for Justin's first year, maybe like as he started becoming a toddler, those type of things. When my mother and grandmother would come and they would have to go home, it was a mess. Like he would have such a meltdown. Okay. And it would take him a really, really long time to, you know, like, to get him to calm down. Like, it would be like, oh, and at first, you know, my mom and my grandmother thought it was funny, but it really wasn't. Like, it was like, oh my gosh, like, this boy will not calm down.
Now, was the meltdown in response to when they would leave?
Yes.
Okay.
The meltdown was always when they got on the train, and because they were at that point, they were no longer driving down to come visit. It was they were on the train. They were going home, and it was really, really bad. And you could be like, Justin, it's going to be okay, and nothing was soothing him. So that was something that that I noticed, and the caregiver noticed that when she would turn on the vacuum cleaner, how Justin would respond, because children with autism and adults with autism have sensitivity to noise, and so like whenever she would turn on the vacuum cleaner, she would say how Justin would scream and it would be really, really bad, and those things. So that was something that I started noticing. And I noticed how intense he was when he was watching television shows, or how he repeated something, and he would repeat it often, and those types of things. So I noticed that, and I would say, I don't know if something's not quite right here. And he wasn't talking. That was the thing. That was something else, that he wasn't having a conversation with me and with Danté at the time, because at this time Justin's 2. And
I was going to ask how old he was.
He's 2 years old. And so where he's not having a conversation. And so working in the school, and working with other teachers and working with individuals in the special education department and things like that, I had expressed some concerns. And so we went to the Office of Infants and Toddlers, and we had Justin evaluated. And so the first evaluation was a speech and language disability. That's what it was. So, we went with that. No, it was specific learning disabilities. That's what it was. So we went with that. But it still was like, no, I don't think this is it. I don't think this is it. And it was a long time before I actually got a formal diagnosis from a medical practitioner that it was autism. We went with that, and that was it. But there again, I just kept doing my own research. I kept doing no, there's certain specific things that he does, and there's certain repetitive things that Justin does, that if you break that routine, he's for lack of a better word, I would say it throws him off. It's throwing him off, or and I don't understand it. So I kept doing a little more digging on my own, looking up some research, and I remember researching autism. And I told Danté, I was like, Danté, I think Justin has autism. I think he has autism, and a lot of people associate autism with either you're on the lower end of the spectrum, which is you're not speaking at all, and you're nonverbal. Or people go to the high end of the spectrum, which is Asperger's syndrome, where you're sometimes previously they would call them like idiot savants. They would say that. And that would be with Asperger's, you are extremely high functioning, but you're high functioning in one specific area. Like you like Temple Grandin has Asperger's syndrome, and she revolutionized the cattle industry. But then there's that spectrum in the middle, which is PDD, pervasive developmental disorders, and that's where Justin fell in.
That's where he fell in.
So where he lacks social skills, he's functioning, and he can be high functioning, but that's that middle gray area where people often don't, that area often gets lost, and people don't necessarily talk about. So that's where we were with him.
So describe for us when you began to notice like something's not quite right. You said that you didn't find out till later that it was autism, but you had done your own research. What was just going through your mind as you were noticing, like, my son is doing things a bit differently? Were you scared?
I definitely was scared. Because he was doing things like, he was just doing things. And you couldn't quite figure out whether it was autism as he was growing up, whether it was just autism or whether it was just a boy being a boy, like normal kid things. Like it was just never a differentiation for me. Like what's autism? What's Justin just being a moody boy? Justin being this, you know, it was just all of that. A lot of it was shame. Early on, a lot of it was shame, again, because I was in a relationship that I shouldn't have been in. And I honestly thought that it was my punishment.
Wow.
That it was, yeah, wow. That it was my punishment. It was because you were in this and this is what you were doing, that this is the result of it. And I remember having a conversation with someone that I worked with a long time ago when I told her the fact that I was pregnant. And you know, there's a scripture in the Bible about it, and you know that the sins of the father, you know, now revisit the children and stuff like that. And you know, because when I told her I was pregnant, she, you know, it wasn't like, oh, okay, you know, it was more that fire and brimstone type of thing. And so that stuck with me. So here I am, and now my child has autism, and it's like, well, you know, that's what you get because you were doing that. So it was it was definitely a lot of shame walking through that. And then how do you help him? You know, what do I do? You know, and I didn't know what to do. I didn't go to a support group. I've never been to a support group of parents with autism. I thought about that, and I asked Danté, did he want to do that? Because again, there were things that, you know, he was doing that we couldn't explain. We couldn't explain it in school. We couldn't explain it. You know, there were things that he would do with us that he was doing in school, and we were just like, Justin, like he doesn't do that stuff with us. And it was just really hard. It was really, really hard, especially when they changed his one time in school. They changed it to his coding. So they changed it from specific learning disabilities to emotional disability at the time, because Justin was, you know, so regimented. So if he left, you know, if he had to transition to something else, you know, it wasn't a smooth transition. And so, you know, we're in an IEP meeting with one of the teachers, and she did not like Justin. You could tell she just did not like him because she didn't know how to deal with this student who has autism, which we didn't know he had autism at the time. And she was explaining some of the things that Justin was doing in school, and so they changed his disability from specific learning disability to emotionally disturbed. That's what it was. That that took me through. Because I was like, he's a lot, but emotionally challenged. That's what we call it now. Emotionally challenged. No, I don't think it's that. And that made me go even further into digging to figure out what is specifically happening with my child. What is specifically happening with
and
him.
How old was he when all this was going on?
So age-wise, I'm not sure. At this point, I think we're in the first or second grade. At this point, we're moving on to the first and second grade. And so we sent him back to another school. We sent him back to the school that he initially started out with. So we sent him back there, and there was a social worker, and it was a social worker, and I was explaining to her what was going on and where we were with it. And she then realized that, yes, this is what it is. And that's when it was changed to autism. And I had gone to a professional, and she also diagnosed it as autism. Fine. So we had a final diagnosis at this time.
And how old was Justin at this point?
He probably was 3rd, 4th grade.
Okay.
So we finally had gotten that, and I was relieved a little bit in that aspect, because at least now, okay, you know what's going on. It was still a hard road, educational wise, but at least it was like, okay, no, we know now this is specific, what Justin is dealing with.
So I want to back up a little bit to Danté. Anybody who doesn't know who Danté is, that is Lynn's husband.
Absolutely.
So I want to back up to when you both met, and you shared with him that, well, maybe you didn't share with him. Mm-mm. You didn't share with him. So when did Danté find out? Was it kind of when you were finding out that things weren't quite?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we were both finding out together, but he was not on board. Okay. Like I was. Okay. He was not on board initially. Okay. When I said, I think Justin has autism, because Danté and I, when we met, our sons, his sons, and my son, Justin, they were turning 2. Everybody was turning 2 years old.
They're the same age.
So, yes. So Danté and I really didn't start dating until Justin's 2nd birthday. That's when we started. The twins had already turned 2. Mm-hmm. Justin, Danté and I were talking, and then when we didn't necessarily become official until after Justin turned 2. Okay. So we are, and then now, we're getting together, and we're definitely, we're blending our family. So I'm learning as I'm learning, Danté's learning. But when I would come to him, when I said, I think Justin has autism, he was like, no, I don't think so. But I printed out the work, and I was like, no, look at this, read this. Justin does everything on this paper. He still wasn't necessarily on board. Like, yes, we should go, okay, we're going to go seek out professional help and things like that. He was just always like, oh, Justin's J is J. Yeah. And I was like, nah, J is not just J. Yeah. J is J. But we need to figure out how to deal with J. Right. So yeah.
So tell us how were the interactions between Danté's children, Taiwan and Jawan, and Justin? Did you notice any, did Justin want to be by himself a lot, or were they interacting a lot early on?
Justin likes to be by himself. So we still have to do this. Like, we have to kind of force Justin to kind of like come downstairs and hang with us. Like, he's just okay with being by himself. Like, he's just okay with it. So because of the situation that I was coming out of, I was very protective of Justin. Yeah, and my kid and the kids will say that, like, you are very I'm easing back off of that, but I was always very like mother bearish. Gotcha. Like, I don't like how he was treated when he was, like the responsibility of the entire situation. So it was like, okay, well, if this is how you feel about him, and if this is how the family is going to entreat him, then I am going to bring him over here and bring him close to me, that he always knows he's loved. And he's cared for.
Talk to us about your support system. So your family, they weren't as embracing?
No, my family was.
Oh, they were. Okay.
My family. But the other side, it was not. It was like, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
You know, and again, it wasn't a good situation. So looking back on it, I could see the positioning.
Yeah.
I could see the stance.
Yeah.
Let me say that.
And you're talking about Justin's dad's family.
Yeah.
Got you. Okay.
I could see why it was the way it was.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, he's a kid. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it was like, well, all right, whatever. But my family, Jay was the first grandchild and the first great grandchild.
Okay.
So he was like,
yeah, he was the one.
He was the it child.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
So, talk to us about. You were saying how you were overprotective. When it came to being in public, were there ever any moments where Justin may have had one of the episodes that he had, like when your mom and your grandmother left? Was there ever anything that happened in public and people were looking or people were whispering or doing anything of that nature? And describe just for us if that happened, and if so, how did you feel and how did you deal with it in that moment?
So it was never, I don't think it was ever, I can't remember that ever being a moment. Okay. I do know that he would, so he has a habit of having it's routine now, but he has a habit of having conversations with himself as though he's like you and I are having a conversation. So he'll have a conversation like it's normal for you to have a conversation with yourself and nobody's there. So it looks like he's talking to himself.
Right.
And I don't know. I just felt like I'm pretty sure it was because of how the whole situation went with his biological father that I always wanted to shelter him from specific things. And so I would often say, you know, don't do that in public. Like I was more of me kind of stifling him and to a degree, because it would say like people, you know, they could just be mean and cruel. And so I didn't want anybody looking at him or making eye contact and saying like, what's wrong with him and those kinds of things. So I would always say, Jay, you know, that's not what you do in public. You know, you don't do that. Of course that, you know, that didn't always help because it's him. Right. You know, so sometimes, you know, I remember I would bribe. I'm laughing because I would bribe him sometimes and we'll say like, so if you go in the store and you're quiet, you don't say anything, you could get a chocolate chip cookie, because those are his favorites. You get a chocolate chip cookie. So he would be quiet. So you got to give him what you give him, right? But then I remembered he knew. So then this was one day we went in the store and he didn't do it. I didn't say anything. He just didn't do it. And and so I was like, oh, God is delivering. Yes. He was like, so Mom, I went in the store and I was quiet. Okay. I was like, you were.
Yeah, you were.
He was like, so you got my chocolate chip cookie? And I was like, bruh.
So where are my chocolate chip cookies?
So at this point, you know you should go in the store and not talk.
Right.
But I got to bribe you to do it? Right. Nah. Okay, so the cookie thing is out the window. Of course, he went back to talking to us. So.
Right. Hilarious.
That's Jay for you.
Hilarious.
Oh, gosh.
So talk to us about the relationship between him and his siblings. And, well, let me back up. So how old was Justin when you got pregnant with Christian?
So Danté and I were not the saving ourselves for marriage couple. We just
first of all,
we were not that.
She has been looking into this camera because she wants to let y'all know
I just got to be transparent here.
That's real.
Yeah, I was not that couple. So I was pregnant with, I was pregnant when I got married. I got married in February and Christian was coming in March. So,
Okay.
So they were turning 3.
Got you. Okay. So,
Oh, goodness.
So you got pregnant with Christian. And were there ever any thoughts of what if Christian also is challenged with autism?
Yes.
So talk to us about that.
So I did think about that. I did. I wondered if Christian was going to be challenged with autism. I don't think it was during the entire pregnancy. But I do think it was that those thoughts did cross my mind. I did talk to Danté about that. What if Christian has autism? What are we gonna do? Is that because I started also looking back at my own family history, looking at my father, and again, people will say things to you that will end up sticking with you. And so, we're looking at my father and certain things that he would do and how he would respond. And I would wonder whether or not my father had autism. Like, was he autistic? But that wasn't his story. But I don't think that was his story.
Okay.
But I remember somebody, I'm not sure who, but I do remember somebody saying that it's usually inherited from the female's father's family, just things like that. So, looking at my dad and some of the things that he was doing, it was like, did he give that? Is that his gene? And I already, felt some sort of way about my father anyway. So it was like, ugh.
Yeah.
And so, that was something, but Christian didn't.
Didn't.
He did not. He does not.
I like what you mentioned about how you began to look at your father and wondered, oh man, like, has he been autistic all this time? And I didn't know, and I like that you shared that because that's a real thought. As far as now you're trying to figure out, well, where did this come from?
Right.
Also, I just want to say I've been saying that Justin is challenged with autism. And the reason why I've been saying that is because I heard you say it. And I didn't want to speak over him in a way that you don't speak over him. So explain to us, why have you been saying, or why do you say challenged with autism?
So Pastor Lawrence has prayed over Justin, and Elder Blackwell has as well, and just praying that he would be delivered from it, and I remember one time Pastor Lawrence saying that God was going to do a miracle in our house, and that miracle would be Justin being delivered from autism. And even prior to that, I've always felt like if you say he has, then you are accepting. And I've always prayed and asked for God to deliver Justin from autism, if you could stop a woman from bleeding the woman with the issue of blood for 12 years, a man who was blind from birth and Jesus spit on some mud and put it on his eyes and the man could see, then you can deliver Justin from a brain disease. Absolutely. So if I always believe that if I say he has it, then I am accepting of this, and I am. It was a long road, but I am accepting of the fact that my child is challenged by autism, and there are some things that he does that are like, that's kind of quirky. Or now I just say those are the quirky things about Jay.
So it took you a while to eventually get to the point of saying challenged with autism.
No, I always said challenge. I think I've always said challenge.
Okay.
or I might have said has early on, like when he was like 2, like in his toddler phases. But I don't remember specifically, but I'm pretty sure like around like 5, 6, I stopped saying he has, and I started saying he's challenged by it. Because I still believe it. You know, Jay's 25, but I still believe that God can deliver Justin from autism.
Absolutely.
So, you know, and I still pray, you know, God, I want to see that miracle. I believe that you can do it. I just do, you know, I just believe that he can. And even if I never see it in my lifetime, I still believe he can do it, you know, so.
Wow. What a great way to end part 1 of Lynn's episode titled Raising a Son Challenged by Autism. Be sure to tune back in next Monday for part 2 here on Facebook, YouTube, and Spotify. That's next Monday, May 9th at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Trust me, you won't want to miss the rest of what Lynn will share about raising her son. If you haven't already, go ahead and like this episode, share it with someone else that they may be blessed and encouraged, and leave a comment in the comment section just letting me know something that stood out from this episode. And if you haven't, go ahead and subscribe to the channel Breakthrough Conversations. In the meantime, everyone, be blessed.